Welcome to the deep dive. We've got a stack of really fascinating source material to get into today. We're jumping right into the 2025 F1 SEAM, looking at things after the first 7 races. So our focus is going to be car performance, right across the grid, and then the unique challenge of Monaco, which is coming up. Plus, there's a brand new rule just for Monaco that everyone's talking about, and also some interesting technical chats happening behind the scenes, stuff stirring things up in the paddock.
Yeah, and the sources we're drawing on here, they're pretty detailed analyses from various F1 blogs looking at car strengths, weaknesses, that sort of thing, across different kinds of tracks we've seen so far. We've also got a really comprehensive preview of the Monaco GP, history of the circuit details, those rule changes you mentioned, and reports on those recent technical directives from the FIA too.
Right. So our mission basically is to take all this info and pull out the key insights for you. We want to give you a really clear picture of where each team is at, performance-wise, heading into the summer races, what makes Monaco such a wild card, always, and what are these complex technical debates that are actually going on behind the scenes? How do they affect what we see?
All right, let's dive in. Okay, so let's start with the big picture. Because reading through the analysis of these first 7 races, what just jumps out immediately is how incredibly tight the field is this year. I mean, compared to recent seasons.
Absolutely. It's remarkably close. And if we sort of work through the teams in reverse championship order, the analysis from the blogs gives some, surprisingly specific insights into how they're actually performing. Starting right at the back, you've got the Sauber C45. The data shows they're averaging about, 1.7% off the pace. Now, 1.7% sounds small, maybe. But on, say, an 80-second lap, that's around 1.4 seconds. And in F1, 1.4 seconds is, it put you last. Wow, only 1.4 seconds off, but still last on the grid. That really does show how tight things are. So what are their specific problems, according to the reports?
Well, their strength, if you can really call it that, is maybe qualifying trim. On fresh, soft tires, they can sometimes sneak a car into Q2, but it needs, absolute perfection. Driver, team, everything. Their main weakness is pretty fundamental, though. Too much understeer car doesn't want to turn in sharply, and just not enough downforce overall. The force pushing the car down, giving it grip, which makes them really struggle when they're following other cars in dirty air. That disturbed airflow just cuts down a little downforce they do have. Okay, moving up a bit, Alpine, the A542. Described as having a pretty handy chassis, actually. The car itself handles okay, particularly in faster corners. Good traction out of slow ones, too. So the raw pace might look all right sometimes, but it's just not turning into results. The big issue, the main weakness, is the tower unit. There's a known deficit estimated around 15 kilowatts, maybe 20 horsepower, which is roughly 0.2 a lap just from the engine. But maybe even more important for the race is the energy harvesting. It's inefficient under braking, so they just don't have as much electrical boost to deploy during the lap, especially later in a stint.
And the key thing is the engines are homologated, right? Frozen for the season. So that deficit, it's not really going to change in 2025. You can kind of see why they're looking forward to those Mercedes engines for 2026.
Right, okay, so Alpine's basically held back by the engine, even if the car itself is decent. What about VCARB? They seemed to start the year pretty strong.
They did, yeah. The VC Aereo 2 looked like a solid midfield runner right from testing. Their strength, the reports say, is that the car is generally quite easy to drive, for an F1 car anyway. Benign handling, predictable, and that's allowed drivers like Tsunoda and the rookie Hajar to really push it, threaten for points quite often. The weakness initially was maybe high-speed corners, just lacking a bit of total downforce. But an upgrade at Imola seemed to help with that a bit. Their main challenge now is just, converting those chances into actual points finishes more consistently. Aston Martin, the AMR 25, seen as an improvement on stability compared to last year's car, but not like a massive leap forward. Its strength is definitely in the fast corners. But the big weakness is the opposite low-speed performance. Alonso's been pretty open about it, hasn't he? Saying the car is dying in the low speed, meaning it just loses performance, responsiveness in those tight, slow bits. Good news is the Imola upgrades seem to help across the board, speed-wise. So maybe they're heading the right way, but that low-speed thing is still the focus. Haas.
They've been a bit of a mixed bag, but generally competitive in that midfield fight. Their strength is having a generally decent overall balance with the car. Makes them a threat pretty much everywhere. The biggest worry, or weakness maybe, that's highlighted is the threat of porpoising coming back. Or bouncing. They had real problems with it in Australia, remember. But credit to them, they reacted fast with upgrade for Japan and Imola. Seemed to get it under control. For now, they'll be keeping a close eye on that, I bet. Williams. They've been a bit of a standout sometimes, haven't they, in the midfield? Even giving Ferrari and Mercedes a hard time occasionally, scored some decent points. Strengths are medium and high-speed corners, Imola suited them. And they're also pretty good in shorter, simpler, slow corners like we saw in Miami. Their big weakness, and it's been a Williams trait for a while now, is the struggle in longer, slow corners. The ones with combined braking and turning on the way in. The analysis says it's less of a problem than in 2023, like maybe a 4 out of 10 problem now. It used to be 8 or 9. But with their main development focus already shifting to the 2026 rules.
That fundamental weakness is probably going to stick around for the rest of 2025.
So Williams are getting better in their weak spot, but maybe not fixing it completely this year because they're already looking ahead.
Exactly that. It's the kind of thing that takes major work, and they've clearly prioritized the 26 regs. Now, Ferrari. Their main strength, maybe surprisingly given some qualifying positions, is usually their race case. Imola is a good example. Qualified poorly, but both cars showed really strong speed over the race distance. Their problem, though, is exactly that qualifying struggle. And the source links this straight to their biggest weakness, having to compromise the ride height, how low the car runs. They have to run it a bit higher to avoid wearing out the plank underneath too much, that wooden skid block. Running lower gives more downforce, more grip, right? But risk the plank wear, get disqualified. So running higher to be safe costs them performance, especially in low-speed corners. It's a mechanical compromise with the suspension needed for that ride height. And while the team talks about optimizing, the analysis suggests they need a physical change, probably rear suspension, to run lower legally. Leclerc himself said there's no sort of silver bullets fix coming soon.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Lift the car for the rules, lose grip in the corners, particularly the slow ones. Got it. What about Red Bull? One races, sure, but not dominating like last year.
No, exactly. The RB21 won 2 races, yeah. But the analysis agrees they aren't consistently the fastest car overall, like the McLaren seems to be. Strengths are clear at Imola, though great grip in the quicker turns, especially on tracks without a massive range of corner speeds. The upgrades there apparently made finding a balance easier too. Where they struggle, according to the sources, is tracks with a really wide range of corner speeds. It makes setup tricky. And they also seem to have a disadvantage managing the core temperature of the rear tires in races. That's different from the surface temp, which was key at Imola where Max was strong. But places like Miami, where managing that core temp was crucial for long runs, McLaren definitely had an edge. Mercedes. Seems like they've got a decent all-round car. No single massive weakness, maybe, but not necessarily a standout strength putting them right at the front consistently either. They could produce downforce across a good range of corner speeds, decent aero efficiency good downforce without too much drag. Traction's solid too. Makes them consistent, often right there behind McLaren and Ferrari. The big problem for them, though, seems to be performance when it gets hot. Russell summed it up pretty well. When it's hot, we're nowhere. When it's cold, we're quick. And this links back to tire management issues. Maybe they haven't really improved how well they keep the tires happy. With the European summer coming up, that hot weather weakness could really bite them. And finally, McLaren, the MCL 39. Described by the blogs as basically the car of the season so far. I mean, 5 wins from 7 races, leading the constructors. It kind of proves it, right? Key strengths, huge downforce across a wide range of corner speeds. But a major, maybe crucial strength highlighted is that advantage in managing rear tire core temperature, especially like I saw in Miami. Now, this ability has been questioned by rivals, but the FIA looked into it, cleared the wheel designs related to it. Their biggest weakness seems to be a lack of front-end feel. That sensation the driver gets through the steering, how much grip is there, seems to be a consequence of the car's stiff suspension setup. Both drivers feel it, apparently, but Lando Norris seems to struggle a bit more adapting to it.
Sources suggest it leads to maybe too many mistakes in qualifying for him. Piastri seems to handle it slightly better.
Wow, okay. That is a fantastic, really detailed breakdown of where every single team is at after these first races. You've painted a super clear picture there. Based on all of that, what really stands out to you? What's the main takeaway from this whole performance overview?
Well, what's fascinating, I think, is just how nuanced it all is. McLaren clearly has an edge, especially with that tire management thing. But the field isn't just, spread out simply. It's complex. Ferrari's got race pace, but is hampered by that ride height issue. Williams has improved a key weakness, but it's still a weakness. Red Bull seems track sensitive. Mercedes is heat sensitive. It just means the specific circuit, the conditions on the day, they're going to play a massive role in the pecking order, maybe even more than we've seen recently. And seeing teams like Sauber and Haas so close behind that really intense midfield battle just shows how competitive the whole grid is becoming.
That level of detail just makes the whole season so much more interesting.
And speaking of specific circuits deciding the order, that sets us up perfectly for the next race. Monaco. The legendary Monaco Grand Prix. This isn't just another race, is it? It's absolutely steeped in history, unique challenges.
Oh, it truly is. This year's the 71st Monaco Grand Prix. First winner was Fangio way back in 1950. It's one of the jewels in the Triple Crown unique status on the calendar. Official name this year, F1 Tag Heuer Grand Prix de Monaco. It's famously the shortest track, just over 3.3 kilometers. Means the shortest race distance too, 260 Ks over 78 laps. Qualifying is just brutally challenging, pushing right to the limit, inches from the barriers. That is Monaco. And yeah, as everyone knows, overtakes in the race. Very, very few.
And the corners themselves are just iconic names, aren't they? Everyone knows them. Absolutely. The blog's preview runs through them. Santavote, turn 1. Boribus, turn 2, saw some shunts last year. Massenet, turn 3. Casino Square, turn 4, instantly recognizable. Mirabujo, turn 5. Then maybe the most famous corner in F1. The Lowe's hairpin, or Fermone hairpin, turn 6. Mirabeau, turn 7. Portier, turn 8, sadly, where Senna crashed in 88. Then the tunnel, obviously, into the Nouvelle Chicane, turns 10 and 11. Tobac at turn 12, surprisingly quick left. The Piscine section turns 13, 14, and 15, 16. La Rascasse, turn 18, another famous one. And finally, Anthony Nose, turn 19, named after the race founder.
So what about last year, 2024? Was it typical Monaco? Chaos, procession.
Well, the big story from 24 was Leclerc finally breaking his home curse. Second Monegasque winner ever after Chiron. Piastri was second, Sainz third. There was definitely chaos early on. Big first-lap crash involving Perez, Magnussen, Hülkenberg. Cost Haas over 100 grand, apparently. Ocon and Gasly had contact, too. There was an early red flag for all that, which actually helped Sainz. He'd got a puncture, but the red flag let him pit for free, basically, and he recovered to third. But then, after that red flag, most cars had done their one required tire stop. And the rest of the race became, well, pretty processional. Everyone just managing tires to the end. The analysis mentioned just 4 overtakes in the reports, none even shown live on TV. Bottas on Sargent, Stroll on Zhu, Stroll on Sargent, Sargent on Zhu, all way down the order. It just hammered home how vital qualifying is. The top 10 finished almost exactly as they started.
Right. Historic tracks, super tight, impossible to pass. And here's where it gets really interesting. Potentially game-changing for Monaco this year. There's a brand new rule specifically for this race.
That's the massive talking point, yeah. The FIA updated Article 30.5 meters in the sporting regs just for Monaco going forward. The key change. A mandatory 2 pit stops for every driver during the race. That means each driver must use at least 3 sets of tires. And crucially, if it's dry, they have to use at least 2 different dry compounds, soft, medium, or hard. And at least one of those must be a mandatory race tire, usually the medium or hard, not the soft, which is more for quali. If you fail to use 3 sets or the right mix in the dry, it's a 30-second time penalty added after the race.
A mandatory 2 stops? Wow, that's a huge change from normal strategy there. What are the implications?
It completely changes the strategy game compared to previous years, especially 2024. It guarantees pit stops. So you can't have that situation like last year after an early red flag where everyone stops once and just cruises. This mandatory element, it probably means a faster race pace overall too. Drivers won't need to manage tires quite so drastically over one mega long stint. They know they have to stop twice anyway. Definitely opens up strategic options. However, the reports still think the undercut pitting early to gain time on fresh tires will be tough at Monaco. Why? Fresh tires take ages to warm up here. The car pitting often comes out in traffic. Car staying out gets clean air. The overcut staying out longer on old tires, benefiting from clear track before pitting that's often still better here. The blogs talk about potential strategies. Maybe medium hard medium or soft medium medium. There's a bit of concern about graining on that really soft C6 tire because the track surface doesn't absorb much rubber, so the medium tire is probably going to be the main race tire. And of course, safety cars. Strategy will hinge massively on safety cars, which are super common here.
Safety cars are always a factor in Monaco, yeah. What kind of weird scenarios could this rule lead to?
Well, it could lead to some slightly odd, maybe even ludicrous situations, as one source put it. Like, imagine a few cars pitting right at the end of lap 1. Just get the first stop done immediately. Then hope to manage tires for a really long second stint. Or, maybe more likely, if there's a red flag late in the race. A car might find itself without enough laps left to actually make that second mandatory stop, which means they automatically get the 30-second penalty, no matter where they finish on track. It forces teams to constantly think about that second stop right up to the flag.
So it guarantees strategy, might boost the pace, adds unpredictability with safety cars, and that penalty risk. How might teams try to, exploit this, especially cars starting further back with maybe less to lose?
Yeah, this is where it could get quite tactical. For teams starting, say, P15, P18, normally you've got almost no hope of points in Monaco, right? This rule gives us a bit of a gamble. A source speculates, could we see a car or two pit end of lap 1? Logic being, get one stock done. Yes, you rejoin dead last in traffic, which is awful in Monaco, but you've ticked one box. Then you run super long on maybe the hard tyre, and you pray for a safety car or a red flag sometime before, say, lap 50. If that happens, you put under caution basically a free stop for your second mandatory change, and you could potentially jump loads of cars that haven't made their second stop yet. You've turned a guaranteed nothing finish into a long shot for points. The alternative is maybe use a short, soft stint after the first stop, try and make up places, pit early again for the second stop, get it done, force others to react. The risk is huge, obviously. No safety cars, you just get stuck, race ruined. But for a back marker, maybe risking that, or even the late 30-second penalty is better than just driving around at the back. It's all about trying to position yourself to benefit if the chaos happens.
Okay, so now let's try and apply that earlier car performance analysis specifically to Monaco. The track, the sources rate it 5 out of 5 for slow corners, 0 out of 5 for fast corners. It's all about low speed traction. Based on current form and that profile, computer predictions from one source put McLaren first, then Ferrari second, Red Bull third, Mercedes fourth, and Williams fifth. But let's dig into some team specifics. Sauber. Based on that lack of downforce, understeer, they're likely to struggle. Getting in Q2 would be a big win. Alpine. Power deficit hurts coming out of slow corners, but their decent traction might help a bit. Racing Bulls, their strong qualifying pace is a major plus here. And worth noting, Hajar was good here in F2 last year, qualified P3, finished P2, Aston Martin. That slow corner weakness is definitely a concern, though the Imola upgrade helped generally. Alonso's Monaco magic, maybe Newey's presence, gives them hope for Q3, maybe points. Podium seems unlikely, though, given the car. Haas, decent balance helps, but like Aston, outright slow speed isn't their strength. Need to avoid any bouncing issues returning. Williams. That long, slow corner struggle is still the key weakness for Monaco, despite the improvements, however. The sources point out they were surprisingly third quickest in slow corners in Miami, which was a colder weekend. So depending on temperature in Monaco, they could be strong. Maybe third or fourth quickest in the corners. Crucial here. Classification is everything, obviously. And Sainz has a great record here, 3 podiums. He's also leading Albon 4-3 in quali head-to-head this year. But the reports also mention some worries about Williams' ops and strategy maybe letting Sainz down recently, despite his potential. Ferrari. Those qualifying and low-speed issues we talked about, the ride height compromise, that's really problematic for Monaco. It rewards exactly those things. Leclerc reportedly isn't feeling super optimistic, even though it's his home race. Red Bull, their issue with a wide range of corner speeds isn't so relevant here, it's mostly slow. But that rear tire core temperature management thing could still be a factor depending on conditions. Computer predicts them third quickest. Mercedes. Their vulnerability in hot weather is a worry. Monaco can get quite warm.
Plus, they have a pretty poor record here recently, especially since the 2017 rules brought in these longer cars. Harder to hustle around here, Russell calling the car a forklift at Imola. Not exactly encouraging for Monaco, is it? Only 3 podiums here since 2017 for them. McLaren. Predicted strongest, based on that slow corner performance strength. Piastri seen as maybe a favorite. His smooth style might suit the car well here. But Norris, that weakness with front and feel, that's tricky in qualifying where you need ultimate precision. He needs to overcome that to fight for pole and the win. Weather forecast, slight chance of rain Saturday quali, maybe 35%. Low chance Sunday race, like 15%. One source actually said they'd prefer a dry race just to see how this new 2-stop rule plays out properly without rain mixing it up too much.
That is such a thorough breakdown, really linking each car's specific traits to this unique track. Fantastic stuff. Now, let's shift gears a bit to the, let's say, complex world behind the scenes. F1 technical rules, recent developments stirring the pot with 2 technical directives, TDs issued just before Imola.
Yeah, and TDs, they aren't actually new rules, right? They're clarifications from the FIA. How they interpret an existing rule often happens when teams question what rivals are doing, or what they think rivals might be doing based on performance. It's standard practice, really. Sometimes teams even use the process of asking the FIA questions about gray areas to sort of smoke out rivals, see if they react or the FIA clamps down. So the first TD before Imola was about skid blocks. It clarified what materials are allowed, how they must be mounted for those blocks used in the plank wear tests after the race. The plank, as we mentioned with Ferrari, that wooden bit underneath. Strict wear limits. This TD was aimed at stopping teams illegally running lower by maybe using clever skid block materials or mountings to pass the test anyway. McLaren, who run pretty low, stated publicly this TD didn't affect them. The second TD got more attention, though, and it ties into that whole McLaren performance advantage discussion, focused on tire cooling. This document wasn't formal instructions, but the FIA basically publishing Q&A they had with Red Bull. Red Bull asked specific questions about potential tire cooling methods. So the FIA used Red Bull's questions as a way to signal to all teams what sort of things are and aren't allowed.
Right. So Red Bull was asking the FIA about ways teams might be cooling tires. What kind of theories were they putting forward? Sounds like proper probing the limits.
Oh, absolutely. The source material detailed the specific ideas Red Bull asked about. Some pretty wild ones. They asked about using fluid-filled skins inside the wheel bodywork. FIA said illegal forbidden liquid cooling of brakes could help tire temps. Asked about a fluid reservoir within the wheel bodywork assembly. Again, illegal, same reasons. Fluid hidden inside mechanical parts in the wheel assembly. Queried that too. Again, ruled illegal by the FIA. Forbidden liquid cooling, potential tire temp aid. They even asked about the drinks bottle trick, piping fluid from the driver's drink bottle towards the wheels to help cooling airflow. FIA ruled that illegal too. Said it would aid tire temps. Make Zach Brown's joke in Miami about drinking tire water make a bit more sense now, doesn't it? Shows this is already an area teams were looking at.
Wow, the drinks bottle trick. They really are thinking outside the box, even if it gets shot down.
That's F1's DNA, isn't it? Pushing boundaries. But there was one really intriguing exception in the FIA's answers. Peltier devices. Thermoelectric cooling. Red Bull asked about using these solid-state devices inside the wheel assembly. They can cool things down or even heat them up using electricity. And the FIA's response here was, well, different, less definitive. They said using Peltier devices for cooling there is not expressly forbidden by the current rules right now. However, they immediately added they would not consider it favorably and would seek to specifically exclude it for 2026.
Okay, so not illegal today, but they don't like it and will ban it later. That is a fascinating gray area.
Exactly. It's a clear signal. Technically, okay today, based on rule wording. Maybe, but against the spirit of the rule, so they'll close that loophole soon. The sources point out F1 designers will definitely have noted that stance and the potential opportunity in the meantime. And the context to all this, as the reports imply, is Red Bull strongly suspects McLaren got that rear tire temperature advantage, like in Miami, using methods like these. McLaren, meanwhile, insists their Imola performance wasn't hit by these TDs. Their advantage is just good engineering, aero-mechanical stuff. They publicly suggest rivals are wrong to think there's some magic bullet technical trick.
So it's classic F1 technical gamesmanship then. One team sees an advantage, suspects how it's done, asks hypothetical questions to try and get it outlawed. And the FIA uses that process to clarify the rules for everyone, sometimes revealing areas that are okay now but won't be soon.
That's precisely what's going on behind the scenes. Yeah, it's a competition in rule interpretation just as much as it is on the track. Just quickly touching on some driver stuff and team dynamics from the sources too. Adds another layer, doesn't it? At Racing Bulls may be affecting Red Bull's future plans. Yuki Tsunoda's performance is apparently under scrutiny. One source said the clock is ticking for him. Compared his form to Perez late last year. Needs to turn that pace into consistent results. Isaac Hedjar is doing well in the RB car. His name's being mentioned for a future Red Bull seat, though reports caution he needs more time. And note, the RB car is seen as maybe more benign, drivable, than the Red Bull itself right now. Liam Lawson, also apparently under pressure, being outperformed by Hedjar lately, needs to deliver by the summer break. The blog suggests Red Bull maybe underestimated how hard it would be to get Albon back from Williams if they wanted him. And speaking of Williams and Red Bull, Alex Albon's strong run at Williams since leaving Red Bull is highlighted. Sources discuss, did Red Bull make the right call choosing Perez over Albon for 21? Did they miss out not keeping closer ties?
His performance at Williams is seen as really good, ideal for maybe a number 2 or 1.5 driver role. And we mentioned Carlos Sainz's recent strategic struggles at Williams, despite his potential and that strong Monaco record. At Haas, Ollie Beerman is seen as maybe having the edge on Esteban Ocon at the moment, partly put down to Beerman getting upgrades first at Imola, though Ocon got them later Friday. And reports suggest Beerman's style handles the car better, Ocon sometimes struggling to understand where the time difference is. And on a more unfortunate note, the reports mention some disturbing online abuse aimed at young drivers, Jack Doohan, Franco Colapinto, Yuki Tsunoda mentioned. After incidents or mistakes, the FIA president, Ben Sulayem, put out a statement condemning it, supporting the drivers. Just highlights a negative side, that kind of fan behavior that unfortunately exists in the sport, separate from the racing.
Yeah, those insights into the drivers, team dynamics, and sadly, that online abuse aspect. It really adds more depth to the whole complex F1 world, beyond just cars and rules.
Okay, wow. We have covered a huge amount in this deep dive. We've mapped out the performance of every single car after 7 races in detail. We've explored the unique challenge of Monaco, dissected that brand new, potentially race-changing rule there, and we've peeked behind the curtain at those complex technical debates going on off track. including those intriguing tire cooling questions and gray areas.
Yeah, we've seen just how incredibly close this field is right across the board, how absolutely vital qualifying is going to be in Monaco given how hard passing is, and how strategy could be way more unpredictable with that mandatory two-stop rule possibly shaking things up a lot. And yeah, had a fascinating glimpse into those technical games teams play and how the FIA steps in to clarify things.
It's so clear from all this, there's always so much more going on in Formula One than meets the eye. From the basic car performance numbers to the specific feel of a track like Monaco and those intricate technical battles fought away from the cameras. Hopefully this deep dive has given you a, quicker path to being really well informed on all these key parts of the 2025 season as we head towards that Monaco weekend.
So here's a final thought for you to maybe chew on as we look ahead to Monaco. With that new mandatory two-stop rule, right? Combined with how nearly impossible overtaking is there historically, and the very real chance of early chaos, safety cars on that tight track, could a team or a driver starting way down the grid actually gamble on a properly extreme strategy, maybe even pitting lap 1, knowing that the penalty for not doing the stops late on is a guaranteed 30 seconds anyway? Or is the risk of just getting instantly stuck in that famous Monaco traffic jam simply too high, even with the chance of a safety car miracle? Something to think about. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the state of the season and the upcoming Monaco Grand Prix.